Dr. Ruth Zambrana, who is a distinguished professor of sociology, women's studies, the director of the Center for Race, Ethnicity, and Gender at the University of Maryland. I mean, I can go on and on and on, just listing all of the incredible work that Dr. Zambrana has offered us, work that transforms, and a leading intersectional scholar in her own right, and just so much love. So her talk is going to be focusing on visionary mentoring, communities of practice as spaces of belonging and thriving. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Zambrana, who will speak for about 30 minutes. We'll do the same thing. We'll break out for about 15 minutes and then come back for the large discussion.
Okay, let me put this up here, share. Okay. Well, good afternoon. It really is a pleasure to be here to share my views on the varying perspectives on mentoring, on communities of belonging, as supports to Latino students at HSIs and other institutions, of course. I also want to thank Dr. Lopez for this invitation, also a leading scholar who has really, I think, been a strong advocate, unrelenting, for intersectionality, for a critical lens in everything that we do. And Dr. Vargas for really an illuminating paper, pioneering paper and presentation. Now, I was around in the 60s, so I hope I don't have the same optimism that the younger people have, because I've been beaten too many times, but I will try to stay optimistic. But I do speak to you what Dr. Washburn talked about. I do speak to you from the ground. I've been on the ground 45 years in academia. So I've been around the block a couple of times. So I'm really going to speak to you from lived experience, from my experiences with many types of students, especially Mexican origin, Puerto Rican students, and other Latino students from many parts of the global South of the Americas. Now, what is different between now and then is the power of language to confuse, to dismiss, and to erase. So one thing when we talk about Latinos, we cannot just talk about Latinos because there are differences, and Dr. Lopez has done a lot of work on this, by race, ethnicity, social class that we talked about, color, phenotype, nativity, which really matter in terms of access to social capital, in terms of who is in higher education. So when Dr. Vargas was talking about, I mean, he spoke about underserved, but how do we disaggregate the underserved? Based on my experience, a lot of the students that are in PWIs in particular, and that I have been aware of that go through community college a little bit more inexpensive, are not underrepresented, underserved students. So when I speak of underrepresented, underserved, I'm talking about Mexican Americans, Mexican origin, Puerto Ricans, and the other group we know of immigrants are the Salvadorians and Guatemalans that have strong social and economic disadvantages. So mentoring itself, I think, has taken on many forms, and it includes coaching, advising, peer counseling, group mentoring. We could do it hybrid. When I speak about mentoring, I'm not speaking necessarily about the one-to-one, but really about a space of safety, belonging, and thriving. And today I want to address a little bit about what mentors and mentees need, and speak to the really confusing panorama of language out there in the sociological and the academic world. Most of you are not students, but there are questions that students may ask you about: how do I get a mentor? How do I, stay away from my tormentors? How do I do the network and mentor shuffle? Because they say we need to have many, many people. And these are questions I think that are really important. because mentors are few and far in between. And although we have a lack of Latino faculty, but white and African-American Black mentors are also very important in our lives. So let me start by saying that I was well mentored. And I came to learn that mentoring, there are 4 C's in mentoring that I think were really important to me. One was caring, compassion, competence, and cash. Money is really important to the underserved. So we cannot have one without the others. And this has been part of my argument at the University of Maryland. Money is not enough. You know, you give me $25,000 or $30,000, that's not enough. I need access to social capital. I need people to tell me the ropes. How do I manage my work in the classroom? How do I get access to resources? How do I get legal access to resources? And in my view, it was competence that really did make a big difference because it linked compassion and caring and cash. So without the competence of them to know how to teach me what to do, embedded in a system of caring, compassion, and money, it really didn't matter. So I think of my own life from the nun in elementary school in the 4th grade to the dean at UCLA, who, when I was in trouble for speaking truth to power, he said, I will back you. So those things have really been important to me. So because those experiences were so positive, as a postdoc, for example, I want to give you all examples of what I think has been important, caring. When I was a postdoc, my mentor told me, you have to use the administrative assistants because you really need your time for intellectual work. They will do everything for you. They will do whatever you need for you so that you can begin to really go up the tenure track ladder. So those types of supports were really important. I tried to reproduce the caring and compassion with my own students and the cash as I could, you know, I mean, produce for them through my grants, etc. And this type of what my life story shows, and I think what I'm going to show you in a little bit, and I'm forgetting about the PowerPoint already, is that mentoring has to be a life course experience because you need to learn how to use mentoring. And it provides you confidence and faith that you are a person of intelligence. So I think that's really important that we also understand that. And of course, I was told by a lot of mentors, but especially that by my mother, that I was smart, fea pero inteligente, and that I could be whatever I wanted to be. So that was important also. So parents, now I am a social worker also by training prior to becoming a sociologist. And I have worked with many parents, and we had a Hispanic serving program here in Maryland where we had a Saturday academy. And my job was to work with parents, and they all wanted their children to succeed. But I had to show them through our group work how it was they could best help their children. So that really important. It is an intergenerational issue. We have to work with families and with the kids because they cannot learn from their families what their families don't know. But their families are open to learning and then reinforcing with their children. So my talk today is going to focus on what do I think makes students, Latino students, successful, and how can we help our students. Let me see, how does this work? Can I move this?
Right now we're seeing the display where only one slide and then the side panel.
Here we go.
Do you
Okay.
want to hit full?
I have it. Yeah. So I wanted to go over, because I think for me, like someone said, the notion of Hispanic serving institutions, there have been strong assumptions by many of us who are not in that field that they are serving only Latino students with a couple of others sprinkled around. So
Dr. Zambrana,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. We're seeing your notes. I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Oh, okay.
I think you can hit full slideshow and then it should go away.
Okay, full slideshow.
The icon on the bottom that shows like just a screen.
Okay, oh, wait a minute. Display notes. No, not notes. Not that.
Does anyone have a suggestion as to how we can get the notes not to show?
Yeah, just go to the bottom, the very right icon.
Oh, is this better?
Yes, it is better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, I think who the HSI serve and the fact, again, Dr. Vargas, he said it twice, but I want to say it again, that they enroll almost 70% of our students. And that is big. And that leaves the PWIs with very little to do with us. And I think they're happy about that. And again, 46% of total HSI enrollment. And again, we see a significant portion of white, African-American about 10%, and others. Now, I am assuming, but I have no idea because we don't have it, about international students. So again, we want to take a little look at data tell this story. And here's the educational attainment, where we see that for Hispanics, about 28.4% have a high school diploma, and those are ages 25 or older. About 13% have a bachelor's degree, 4% a master's degree, a professional degree is 0.6, and a doctorate degree is 0.7. And if you look at data from 1980 to the present, I think this has changed 0.2, the doctoral degree has changed like 0.3%. So we have to ask ourselves, where are the bottlenecks? Why aren't we moving forward? An African-American is a little bit better than us, but not that much better. Now, who attends college? I don't like that you cannot see up here, but who is attending college among the Latinos? And I think this is really, really important, because the data as aggregated data really does not give us a real picture of who is educated in this country. So what we're seeing is that the immigrant population, particularly those who came post-1970 and post-2000, a large and significant brain drain from South America are the ones who are the most likely to attend college. This has to do with the fact, and I think Dr. Lopez mentioned this, of parental education. So a lot of the Pew studies show, and my own studies have shown, that many of these individuals, their parents were college educated. So more than half, Colombian, Costa Rican, Peruvian, Venezuelan, Chilean, are attending college in much larger numbers. Down here are more the groups who are historically underrepresented: Mexicans, Salvadorians, Puerto Ricans, Guatemalans, and Hondurans. So a lesson of this is that we need to know who the Latino is. We need to know their background in order to be effective. This is 2019 data from Pew, and Pew has a very good data set. Then we are looking at science and engineering, because I know we talked about STEM. Now these data, master's degree recipients Hispanics, it says 12.2% in science and engineering, bachelor's degree 16%, and doctoral recipients 8%. Now, to me, these data seem inflated. I am not sure, and Dr. Vargas, you have worked with these data from the National Science Foundation and the iPads. They tend to include resident citizens and international citizens. So there are different ways that data lie. there is a book that was written by a sociologist, How Data Lie, which has continued over the last few years to increase the numbers of STEM and college professors, but they include many other groups. So when data hide in their story of Latino progress, and I think what we have seen in the last 10 to 15 years, as equity issues have arisen and equality issues have arisen, that data look like we're doing really well. Now, we do know when we talk to people in Texas, I don't know about Arizona, that dropout rates in many communities could be as high as 40 to 60%, that these dropouts or pushouts are not counted in the graduation rates. And when I looked at the National Center for Education statistics, it shows the high school dropout rate for Hispanics at 7.4%. Now, everyone who works in our committees knows that this is not true. So this erases the reality in many underserved communities. Less than 10% of all teachers were Hispanic in 2018. I do think that that has not changed significantly. We have very few role models for our kids. And these are some of the factors that are contributing to our students being in some ways underprepared. And the few that do go have a hard time because they come from communities that are highly segregated. So again, the point I'm trying to make here is that this data doesn't really tell the whole story. And Latinos continue to be overrepresented in open access and community colleges and underrepresented in public and private four-year and elite institutions. Now, I did my study in WPIs because that's where knowledge is produced. And that's where you get money. You actually get paid a decent salary, and it is where you can have more social and economic mobility. Now, I had to rewrite my presentation, Dr. Vargas, because I read your paper and I said, okay, let me address some of this. So I think it is pretty much a known fact that Latinos attend low-performing schools, that they are usually underprepared. Even I had in my own study of faculty, several Mexican origin and African Americans told me they were the top, they got the valedictorian in their high school, and when they got to college, they were on the bottom of the pile, okay? So this outcome, I think we have to address it, and I hope that we can address this question later. The truth is, this is not individual outcome, but institutional failure. But if we don't acknowledge it and work with it, our students cannot make it through the higher education system. The other big thing, I think, is that many of our students have had limited exposure to white culture. As a result of highly segregated neighborhood experiences of racialization, and they often encounter high levels of exclusion and discrimination. And these experiences debilitate strength. So this is not for all. I'm talking about predominantly those four groups. I think we have South Americans who have European backgrounds, who are white, who are comfortable with white people, and who come into the United States and are able to easily integrate into those communities, different from racialized Latinos. So how do we speak to underserved low-income Latino students' strengths and educational disadvantages simultaneously? I don't think it is helpful, in my view, to talk about their strengths without talking about educational disadvantage, because then they are treated equally when they are not equally prepared. And it is the equity lift that will bring them to equality. But they cannot get the equity lift if we're talking, about all their strengths. And they have plenty of strengths. Tienen ganas. They have worked really hard, they have pride, etc. But in the educational system, we have to figure out a way to speak about these two really critical programs. So I think, so how do we begin to address this educational disadvantage before they get to college? I think no-cost academic summer bridge programs starting in the second year of high school. we have to get them before they're even applying, because we need to, I mean, we can say first year of high school. We can, but I think at least in second year of high school. I'm trying to say, well, what can we actually do? I think no-cost college summer bridge programs. Some private elite schools are already doing this, and they will take 2 or 3 Latinos and they do this for them, but we need it to be more of a common practice. We need communities of belonging on campus. I did not use communities of practice because, again, like affirmative action, like diversity, like first generation, communities of practice mean 100 different things. So whoever is speaking to it will define it like they want. But we need communities of belonging. The other thing about communities of practice is that they're supposed to be unstructured and they're guided by the group itself. I think our students need faculty and staff to help them to get access to resources, as well as to gain some educational capital and how to work within their environment. Now, I think we need specific tutoring programs with educators or student tutors who understand student background. I've had students, now I've been teaching 45 years. I've had students in my class who couldn't write, couldn't understand this. I send them to the writing programs. They go over their outline and they say, okay, now you go write. Oh, the reason you're there is because you're supposed to check their writing and help them to understand basic. So if you don't understand the background of the student and the needs and the deficits in particular of students, then you're not going to do a very good job at tutoring. And we see this over and over. My Latinos will say, I went to tutoring, they still failed the course. So there's a disconnect there. Active outreach was told to me by a Mexican-American student affairs professional. We need to go out and find the students. We can't be putting out little flyers and expect the students to see them to come to us, but active research, because we have a mission to help them in some ways. This was part of a paper we did, and we talked about mentoring throughout the life course. I think this is the paper you have. And I do think in high school, we need to have the role models, which we don't have. I mean, I think these are the structural issues that are preventing us from being able to be successful and increase our numbers of underserved students in the pipeline. So the high schools themselves, we need to increase our teachers. I think in college, we need to provide opportunities for critical engagement and access to dominant culture, knowledge, and marginalized knowledge. Now, one of the things we know is that for those programs, for the HBCUs, for example, that their ethnic and racial programming brings with them a lot of pride, where they feel pride in who they are. We don't have that in many of our universities. And I think the individuals in my group talked that they did have some programs around that. So that's really important. A community of belonging can help to do that. At UT Austin, which I spent a year, I was totally amazed. They did have these real cultural ethnic programming where the students felt such pride. And so there is a number of things that have to be done. The other thing, and I think that Dr. Vargas referred to this when he was answering questions, professors need to acknowledge the struggle of Latinos. And we need to be able to develop allies among the white and now among foreign-born faculty who represent almost 1/3 of universities. So now we have 2 groups who are less informed on this population, and we need to get them up to par. I think the other big thing that I've also been fighting for my entire time is that we need to provide research opportunities that shepherd students through the different elements of research. Without research skills, without writing skills, they're going to have a very difficult time getting into graduate school, or passing their courses. So when someone said, one of our group members, that a school was lowering their scores to enter and lowering their eligibility requirements, unless they get additional supports, that's not going to help them, because they're going to leave the university with less skills. They came in with less skills, they're going to leave with less skills. So we cannot make these accommodations without providing individuals with the skills that they need to make it in society. And even small things, I'm working with a young woman now. She's from a lower income Mexican family. I'm trying to teach her a little bit about dominant culture etiquette and protocols without demanding assimilation. You can be who you are, but when you're in white, so this is important. And it takes a lot of courage, I think, to do this, but it has always been accepted because I care and I have compassion. And oftentimes there's a class identification that helps for you to teach some of these very sensitive issues. So again, for all of you who are doing mentoring, there is no single comprehensive definition of mentoring. There are all kinds of definitions. I think my favorite is the third one here. I mean, these two, they involve the exchange of information beyond that available from procedural manuals. It's a close, non-competitive, deeply personal relationship. I call my mentoring strategic mentoring because I'm giving them the do's and don'ts of how to live in academia, of how to live in the classroom. Simply, you have to know your professor. If something goes wrong, it's going to be much easier to redo something or to get a different grade or to pass in the paper late. So it really is how to negotiate an environment that is so different from yours. We have individual and group mentoring. I think group mentoring can also work if it is students who share a particular issue or particular question. Now, peer mentoring, I've always thought about that, not always, but I think sometimes that's the blind leading the blind. I have actually participated and been there. No, peer mentoring is for support, to share information. Oftentimes is not, or mentoring is not what peer mentoring. I think that support mentoring is really important. I think mentoring communities are important, but again, we have to be careful with how we define things for our students. Now, I just want to go over the mentee. There are challenges that we experience, and I experience with underserved Latino students and underserved Latino faculty, because I do a lot of work with young faculty. They have too many obligations and don't have time to talk to you. They cancel everything because something happens. Something happens. And I just, it's hard for me to deal with this. And because I feel like they're losing out. But they don't have parents who can pay for their childcare. They don't have parents who can have to pay for an apartment near the university. So all these things really matter. And they're a challenge to the mentor, if they're a good mentor. A lot of them feel, I just want to be independent. I don't need your help. I can manage this. And I really don't know if that is fear of disclosing that they don't know, or I don't know what kinds of fears, because they don't know and they need help. So, but somehow they don't feel that. Of course, they have had prior negative experiences and fear repetition of adverse experiences. So I think it's important for us as mentors to ask them, what was your prior mentoring relationship like? Oftentimes they're unsure on how to engage a mentor, how to ask questions. And mentee must want to be guided and supported. So I'm working with a young woman, again, Mexican origin. She had an interview at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm alum. I recommended her. I called the dean. I did everything in my power. And I gave her a letter of recommendation as an alum. I said to her, let's role play. 4-hour interview. I said, let's role play this interview. I'm going to help you, not sort of looking at faculty. How many think she role played with me? 0. Did not role play with me. She got rejected. She should not have gotten rejected. She is a genius. I don't know what happened there, but I'm assuming that there were some just minor, dominant cultural expectations that were not met. So again, that's important. The student complaints, and this is also true. We have too many obligations. So I think also that as Latino faculty, for those of us who are committed to this, and I know that Dr. Lopez, she must kill herself, 90 people, that we also are overloaded in the academy. And we also are under extreme stress of discrimination and all kinds of negative experiences. Of course, we're not going to be crying to the mentee because they have enough problems, but how do we spread this out there? And this is where I have finally come to the conclusion that we need more white allies to help us with this, that university has to take on these issues. So then we have, I think when we think of who can really mentor, not everyone can be a mentor, nor should we put everyone. So these virtual, we're going to match you through who knows what, some app, and put you together. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if APHA, I just saw, has a matching mentor, public health student, etc. I don't know. Maybe you all can inform me that it does work. But whoever is the mentor, they have to be aware of their unique attitudes, beliefs, and values that drive the world of URM students. They have to be sensitive to systemic barriers. I mean, we do not have this power due to oftentimes to our color, race, ethnicity, or class to overcome barriers and challenges. So there has to be sensitivity. They have to be politically balanced and aligned. I mean, I found it very hard to work with mentors or to work with colleagues who are racist, who believe that, Mexicans don't make it because they're lazy or they don't want to. And many of our students have experienced that. For example, African-American and Mexican, why are you studying Mexicans? Why don't you find a topic that's more interesting? That's not going to get you anywhere. So this still happens, Dr. Vargas. They have to be sensitive to demands placed on URM students. We have a lot of family obligations, caregiving obligations, our mother, our grandmother, our brother, our sister. I've had students who had to run out of class in the middle of teaching to pick up a brother, and then they would come back an hour later. I mean, amazing, but it's real, and we need to understand that.
We have like 2 more minutes for the presentation part.
Okay, Lynn. Wow, this is a good one to end on then. So what do we know they want? They want transparency and straight talk. Don't be going around and around the typical American. I mean, I still have trouble understanding Americans. They go round and round and round and giving you all these options when you don't have any. Solid and specific guidance on expectations. I think direct political guidance. When I say political, I'm talking about power. What is the power? So yesterday, someone asked me, a student, should I confront that staff member? No, not that important to be confronting. It's not important. So we got to tell them it's not important. Caring and listening ear, embodying a sense of safety and trust, and social network connections, connecting them with the right people, telling them, go see this professor, go see that professor. I think those things are important. So when the students talk about belonging and thriving, they talk about collaborators, friends, tools, affirmation, encouragement, interdisciplinarity, social justice, commitment, exposure, knowledge, engagement, hope. They need hope. So those of us who do this, I think we do have to be authentic. We have to be courageous. We have to encourage them to be unapologetic. Even if they're not doing well in a class, they still want to get a PhD. Professors will say to them, no, you can't get a PhD. You could barely pass this course. We have to encourage them to persist, to be there, responsible, accountable. They need to have the financial supports, and that's really important for them. Many of our students work 2 and 3 jobs. Of course, they're not doing well in school. So these areas are ways to help students thrive. They need concrete advice, concrete jobs, concrete information, because they don't have it and they have very limited ways to access it. So, I mean, that's what has become my vision after 45 years of what they need, but we need to know who they are. And when I was doing my study, I just want to say this, Dr. Lopez last. When I was doing my study on URM faculty, just African-American with a history of slavery in the US, Native Americans, Mexican origin, and Puerto Ricans, white faculty throughout this entire country did not know who was who, nor do I think they think it matters. But it does matter. Who our underserved students are, our historically underrepresented students are, matter. They have different needs from immigrant students. They have different needs from dreamers. But where do we focus? I think we need to focus on the big picture and on the largest, number of groups that we have in our schools. Okay, that's that.
Wow. Thank you so much for this. I just saw my whole life flash before my eyes and listening to all of the nuggets that you shared with us.